Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. This is a Posh at Work presentation of legal insights on important issues surrounding sexual harassment and related matters. Posh at Work is a boutique firm which assists organizations across sectors in complying with the law against sexual harassment at workplace and related matters pan-India. My name is Sania Talwar. The judgment I will be discussing with you today is Jaya Kotade versus Respondent Rashtrasant Tuktoji Maharaj Nagpur University by the High Court of Bombay, Nagpur bench on 13 June 2014. This is a 6-year-old judgment. However, we at Posh at Work have picked this up for discussion today because it clarifies some of the most common questions that we are asked even today during our training in awareness programs. In fact, this judgment provides basic clarity to some of the most important provisions under law and forms the very backbone to understanding the applicability of this law. In a nutshell, this judgment throws light on the following questions. Number 1, whether the law deals with sexual harassment of employed women only. Number 2, who is an employee under law and who is an employer? Number 3, in case respondent is an employer but also has ingredients of employee, whether the local committee will inquire into such complaints or the internal committee of a workplace will do so. 4, what is a workplace and how are internal committees required to be constituted? 5, what should the composition of internal committees look like? What is the role of members and the independent external member? 6, how do internal committees work and how are reports required to be prepared? Because the Bombay High Court in this case has answered several important questions, and so that we are able to understand the judgment of this court on each point in its entirety and easily, we have divided this discussion in 3 parts. In today's video, I will explain the judgment of the court on the first 3 questions. In part 2, I will cover questions regarding number 4, and in part 3, I will cover questions regarding number 5 and 6. Stay tuned for these videos as well. So let's look at the facts of this case. In this case, 3 writ petitions were filed and the Bombay High Court decided to hear them together as all these petitions raised identical challenges. The first petitioner was working as an assistant professor in geology in Sri Shivaji Science College, Congress Nagar, Nagpur. Similarly, second petitioner was working as assistant professor in the Department of Physical Education, and third petitioner was working as assistant professor in mathematics. They had filed sexual harassment complaints in their college, but those had not been inquired into by the internal committee of the college and the petitioners had been transferred. Accordingly, the petitioners filed writ petitions before the Bombay High Court. Their prayer was that the order of transfer should be set aside and their complaints be inquired into by the internal committee. Respondents in the 3 petitions included: number 1, the principals of senior and junior college; number 2, the head of department of geology; and number 3, the president of the society that ran the college. They argued that they are employers and that any complaint against them can be looked at by local committee only and not by internal committee. Therefore, the question that arose for consideration before the court was whether president, who is the secretary of the society administering the college and principal of the college, can be subjected to jurisdiction of internal committee, as according to these respondents, they are covered by definition of phrase employer in the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act 2013. In a nutshell, the court held that the question whether respondent is an employer or an employee will call for determination in the context of the facts and situation. And in the facts and circumstances of this case, the respondents will be considered to be employees, and internal committee will have jurisdiction to inquire into sexual harassment complaints against them. The background to this and why this question arose is because under law, the term employer has been defined as the head of the department, organization, undertaking, establishment, enterprise, institution, office branch or unit, etc. It has further been defined as any person responsible for the management, supervision and control of the workplace, and a person discharging contractual obligations with respect to his or her employees. Also under law, the term employee has been defined as a person employed at a workplace for any work on regular, temporary, ad hoc or daily wage basis, either directly or through an agent, including a contractor with or without the knowledge of the principal employer, whether for remuneration or not, or working on a voluntary basis or otherwise, whether the terms of employment are express or implied, and includes a co-worker, a contract worker, probationer, trainee, apprentice, or called by any other such name. Further, the question is whether internal committee will have jurisdiction on complaints filed against employers. In this context, it is also important to understand what the terms internal committee and local committee mean, and what is the difference between them. For the benefit of those of you who are watching our video for the first time, under section 4 of the law, every organization having 10 or more workers must constitute an internal committee to redress complaints of sexual harassment at workplace. So while internal committee is one kind of committee that the law prescribes for which each organization needs to have, it also prescribes for another kind of committee called local committee that each district needs to have. Section 6 of the law states that every district officer shall constitute in the district concerned a committee to be known as local committee, which is to receive complaints of sexual harassment from establishments where internal committee has not been constituted due to having less than 10 workers, or if the complaint is against the employer himself. Therefore, as per this section, if a person files a complaint against an employer, the complaint has to be handled by the local committee, which is an independent body made by the government in each district. This is why the respondents argued that complaints against them will need to go to the local committee. Regarding the definitions, the court held that a mere look at the definition of words employee and employer reveals that both occupy the fields which are not mutually exclusive. Some posts or designations shall fall under both. A high-ranking lady officer occupying managerial or supervisory post in employment may become victim of sexual harassment. She may exercise administrative powers over several subordinates. So long as she is answerable to somebody else, maybe an artificial person, she may in that eventuality qualify to be an employee. A lady head of the department or principal or chief executive officer may therefore fall under both these definitions. Similarly, the respondent may also hold these posts and therefore is covered under both these heads. The court also said that normally these concepts are mutually exclusive and will not overlap. But we find in the 2013 Act, these concepts are loosely defined to enable the 2013 Act to reach as many respondents as necessary to advance effectively the object and to curb the mischief. Thus, it said that the question whether respondent is an employee or employer will call for determination in the context of the facts and situations. Finally, it said employee and employer appear to be interdependent concepts, warranting either narrow or liberal approach in the perspective of the context to preserve the legislative sanctity of definition of aggrieved woman, respondent, and to further the object of the 2013 Act. When aggrieved woman happens to be an employee, concept of employer as defined will have to be understood in extremely narrow manner, thereby pushing into the fold of employee, even a high-ranking officer or an elected office bearer, whether paid or not, but owing some obligation to the superiors or a superior body like managing executive committee or a general body. Applying this to the facts of the case, it is said that the petitioners are in the employment of an artificial person, that is a society registered under the provisions of Societies Registration Act, which is also a public trust registered as such under the Bombay Public Trust Act. Facts show that the principal is in fact in employment of the college and is recognized as an employee for the purposes of Maharashtra Universities Act. Though head of the department finds inclusion as employer under law, still it is not in dispute that he has superiors like principal and management to whom he is answerable. He cannot be the authority at top. Here the society or public trust being the administrator of college, it is obvious that final authority to take any decisions or to give finality to any action or decision is with it. Hence, in appropriate circumstances, they can be recognized as employees. The president of the society or his secretary are also not final authorities and are answerable to the executive committee or the board of directors, as the case may be. The general body of members has ultimate authority to overrule the executive committee or the board of directors. Thus, president or secretary as such remain subordinate to these two superior bodies. Its extent and scope will be governed by various legal provisions, including the scheme or constitution or bylaws of the society or the trust. Hence, in this 2013 Act, unless the context otherwise requires, they also need to be treated as employee, and internal committee will have to have jurisdiction over them. The court therefore said that because the principal, president and secretary of the trust are answerable to someone in the organization, they will not fall in the box of employer, and the internal committee shall be competent to inquire into complaints against them. It said that internal committee will have jurisdiction on every person who can be placed as employer if he or she is a respondent and falls under otherwise wider definition of the term employee. Concept of either employee or employer as defined must be understood in a way conducive to further the object of enactment, and unless otherwise necessitated in favor of aggrieved woman. On the first question, whether the law deals with sexual harassment of employed women only, the court said that the law does not envisage an aggrieved woman to be a woman always under a contract of employment with the workplace. It also referred to the definition of aggrieved woman under section 2A of the law, which states that in relation to a workplace, it is a woman of any age, whether employed or not, who alleges to have been subjected to any act of sexual harassment by the respondent. Court said that the words whether employed or not emphatically rules out any need of master-servant relationship between such aggrieved woman and the respondent. If you found this information helpful, please like our video and subscribe to our channel for regular updates. In case you have any queries about the law or our services or want any assistance, please visit our official website www.poshatwork.com or contact us. All links and other details are provided in the description box below. Stay tuned for part 2 and 3.